G'day everyone, and a big welcome back to the Big Swing Noting podcast, sending those bales back to New South Wales since 2019 as we approach the end of 2020, but it is just the beginning of the 2020 to 2021 summer of cricket here in Australia, and boy is this shaping up to be entertaining as all hell. The domestic season is now back underway. We've had two rounds of Sheffield Shield have already gone past without, or they've got a hub sort of thing going in South Australia, whatever you want to call it. I think a schedule's still sort of rolling around there. But yeah, Victoria haven't played yet, which is sort of annoying. But nevertheless, there's some very interesting things to be drawn from there. But yeah, just before we get all back into that, I just want to say, it has been a minute. And it's been a few personal things going on in my life, but we've got a big summer of cricket planned here on the podcast, and we're ready to not just be here in the rant section and the ding, as this show I completely forgot was called actually, but we'll hopefully be having back to a group podcasting with the other squad members, as we saw last summer, which seems like an eternity ago now. But that is still absolutely on the cards, and we'll just have to see what transpires as the summer goes on. But right now we can only work with what we've got, and that is episode 4 of the Ding. So I'm going to focus on the Australian summer at the moment. I know I said I'd do an IPL sort of mid-season review or keep up with it, but It's been a lot going on, and to be honest, I can't really add much to it that hasn't already been said. So I'll just keep things from an Australian perspective at the moment. So the Sheffield Shield first round and second round has wrapped up already, and right off the bat, we can basically confirm a couple of things. Number one is Travis Head will be batting 5 in the Test series for Australia. I think it's basically a given at this point. What he scored 171 not out, or was it 181? I think it was 171. But that was all he really needed. I think he was going to play regardless, but that goes from him being a likely to being a lock. So I think he really needed that for his international career, and I'm really glad for him that he can, because I think he's still the same age as Marnus. I think that's what we established. Was he 2 years old? I can't remember. Regardless, I think he definitely has the potential to be the next Test captain for Australia. So it's good to see him scoring runs. But of course, the big topic that everyone has been talking about is Cameron Greene. I mean, how can you not talk about him? The man's just gone and scored 197. He batted well over a day and a half for the best of. He scored a 50 in the first match as well, scored, I think, another 40. So there was already discussions for him going into potentially taking Matthew Wade's spot in the number 6 position, just as a sole batsman. But obviously we haven't seen Matthew Wade bat yet. I think he's going to be back next round. Or maybe he's back in this round, I'm not sure. I know he's missing a few rounds for family reasons, so congratulations, by the way, to Matthew Wade. But we haven't seen him bat yet, so we can't really rule him out, even though he didn't have a really eye-catching summer at all, especially by what we've become accustomed to over the last few years with him, especially in the domestic setup, and honestly at this point in the Test setup, where I don't think he scored anything over 40 or 36, which is it's definitely not ideal. But then again, his opportunities were pretty limited. So I think his spot is certainly up for grabs. But the big thing for me about Cameron Greene, and the big thing that everyone seems to be forgetting, or maybe everyone's not forgetting, and maybe it's just all getting swallowed in the hype around his batting, is that Cameron Greene is a genuine bowler, and he hasn't been bowling for, I think, about a year now, or just under a year, and he's going to be bowling again this week. So that's where I was sort of leading into, because the ODI squad for the India tour, for India touring Australia, later next month, last day in October in a few days, and then it'll be November, and we will be well and truly into the India season, if you like. This is going to be really, really interesting. We've seen both squads now announced for sure. I'll give a closer prediction, if you like, and analysis as it properly approaches. But what we got today was the Australian ODI and T20 squad, of which it must be said a surprise. It was a surprise to me to see Cameron Greene's name included in there. There was a couple other names that I'd like to break down a bit later. But yeah, Cameron Greene is listed as an all-rounder. Well, he hasn't, obviously I don't list positions, but I presume that is what they're looking at, because if you think about Australia's ODI team, right, like, he can't play. There's no way Cameron Greene can be playing a T20. He averages, he's played one season. He wasn't really that good. He was batting down at 6. He didn't get much of a bat. It was his rookie season. There's no way he can really play that. ODI-wise, I don't actually mind it. I don't mind the idea of bringing over such a dominant and sound technique guy over into the white ball arena. It's like they did with Marnus last year. He was just so dominant with the red ball that it was nigh on impossible just to not get as many games into him as possible, and subsequently develop him as an ODI cricketer, which, as it stands right now, looks like a brilliant decision. I think he's already made 350s and has a ton to his name already, from an ODI standpoint. But furthermore, what I really wanted to talk about is because Mitch Marsh, they've overlooked him for, the series is in basically a month's time, but they've overlooked him for this white ball series, multiple white ball series, but because he's been injured, and they want to ease him back into it through Australia A tour games, which is that's cool. But I think most people are sort of disregarding that just because they just figure that Mitch Marsh has been sort of out of the setup. The last ODI series we played against England, the last ODI series we won against England, Mitch Marsh was there, and he has been he's been all right. He's been all right in the ODI setup, and just being that, that sixth, right? Yeah, the sixth bowling option or fifth bowling option, and being able to chip in at the end. I think he's definitely getting better at that. But of course, they didn't. They deemed the injury to be too much, or perhaps they just want to look at a few different things. So they've named 3 potential all-rounders. One is Marcus Stoinis, which we figured would be in the squad, just because he always really is. He's just a sort of reserve. Cameron Greene was the other one. And the third was Moises Henriquez, which I'll get onto a bit later. But the first one I'll talk about is Marcus Stoinis. And what is perhaps a bit different this summer for Stoinis is he has been batting a bit lower in the IPL. For the most part, he's actually just been bumped up to 3. But he's been playing really, really well with the bat, and he's played a great finishing role. He's won multiple games for the Capitals. He choked the first game, but after that, he's been superb. He's taken them to super overs and the like. So it's sort of I'm not sure if that completely, it won't completely change the perception on him in the eyes of the selectors, but it might make them think about playing him down the order at 6 again, which is really the position across all formats is the position to get. It's the number 6 spot, the all-rounder position basically. And he's been all right with the ball. I think he's chipped in with the wicket, which is all you really want your batting all rounder to do, which is all they're really searching for. They're not looking for a 10 over guy that's also going to score tons. They're just looking for a guy that can either finish. Actually, I think more versatility is probably something that people often forget about ODI cricket, especially. You need a lot of versatility in the number 6 position. It's not just for your slogger, as they've tried to play Glenn Maxwell in the past, which has just been completely wrong. But they're sort of seeing from that point of him now. But it's also, you need to be able to hold down an end. You must be able to finish. and then you got maybe like just a few overs at the other end if you need a breakthrough. Generally might bowl like 4 to 6 is generally the like, because Australia are going to have Stark, Cummins, Hazelwood, and actually no, they will have to share. Am I missing something? No. Stark, Cummins, Hazelwood, and Zampa, unless they play 5 bowlers. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. I'm definitely missing something there. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see if Stoinis, because as we saw in the last ODI series, when he was just filling in for Steve Smith, who was injured, he didn't have a very good series at all. And he was batting at 3, which I think if you're going to play Stoinis, that's where he has historically needed to be. He's needed to be either an opener or batting at 3. And so I think it's very interesting that they chose, but what he's been able to produce in the IPL now, because I think that can also bring in an element of, okay, is he a finisher now? Is he a guy we can play in that all-rounder position? And I suspect that he might get first dibs, or the first game against India. I mean, this is like, again, before the rest of the domestic stuff is wrapped up, or until the Sheffield Shield break is wrapped up, until the IPL is finished. I think the One Day Cup starts before the White Ball series. I don't quote me on that. Actually, is it even happening? I can't even remember. But we haven't seen like the full parts of everyone yet. So that's why I'm like hesitant to completely rule him out, because I think he definitely does bring an extra element now to that all-rounder position. If he has if his IPL form is anything to go by, then we could very well be seeing him back in the 6th position and perhaps thriving for us once more, as he did like a few years ago, where he was like a genuine finisher. And then, so the other all-rounder picked was Moises Henriques, which everyone is just sort of shocked by, and I don't really understand it. Because if you've watched, especially the Sheffield Shield, any domestic cricket at all over the last year and a half, Moises Henriques has been the best all-rounder. He's been exactly what you want a batting all-rounder to be. His bowling, he probably hasn't bowled as much as maybe the selectors would have liked, which sort of makes me think maybe he won't get picked. But he's in the ODI squad for the first time in 3 years, or ODI/T20 squad for the first time in 3 years. And I think there's actually a high possibility that he plays in the T20 series, because they've really been chopping and changing there. There's no real set in stone order. Like the only real locks you can have in that are Finch, Warner, Smith in the top order, and Maxwell if you really wanted to, because like Alex Carey just got dropped, but then he also went and scored 100 in the ODI series, so I don't know how that goes. But actually no, Alex Carey will be, because they haven't picked another keeper. Oh no, Matthew Wade is still a keeper, isn't he? He's still a keeper in the. They could do that, because Josh Phillip hasn't been picked, which is sort of a shame. I thought they might go for the extra bowling option, extra batting option rather, in Flip, and if they need just a variant, then they could throw him in with the gloves into the T20. I think there was a lot of speculation going on when we were touring England earlier this year, whether perhaps Phillip was the guy to either A, replace Carey, or B, go in as a specialist batsman, and just sort of finish off the inning, because he's definitely got the spark within him. But no, instead they chose to go with an extra bowler in Daniel Sams, who won't get a game. But then again, I guess they did omit Meredith, Ty, and whom else? I can't remember. Oh, and Marsh. Anyway, that would be 3 bowlers, I guess. But you also got Sean Abbott in there, who's ahead of the pecking order from Daniel Sams anyway. And that's interesting to think about, though. So I would have liked to seen a Flip in there. But he still probably wouldn't have played. But, I think in this position there's so much more uncertainty, as there always is with the Australian team. There's so much more uncertainty with our batting than there is with our bowling. You basically got the two locks three locks in white ball cricket, in Stark, Cummins, and Zampa, and then you generally got like Kane Richardson in there. Hazelwood, I think, has cemented his spot in the ODI team now. So then, that's sort of what it is. You don't really need too much depth unless like Hazelwood gets injured, I guess. But anyway, I'm going off topic. Moises Henriquez is in the squad, and everyone is really surprised by it. And if it were up to me, if the tour of Bangladesh, the test tour, was to go ahead, what would it have been, 3 months ago now? I would have picked Moises Henriquez in the test team. I think he was absolutely the standout all-rounder. Actually, no, Mitch Marsh is still wasn't injured then. But I think Moises Henriquez, he was, top 5 bat last year? Top 3 bat? I can't remember the exact statistics. But he's really been holding his end, and he scored a ton just in the first round of Shield already. He scored 146, I believe. There's been plenty of times. To be honest, in fairness to everyone that hasn't been batting, into all the speculation, the pitches have been roads. They've been flat as anything. They've been pretty boring to watch. The only person that's really been able to get anything out of it at all has been Sean Abbott, who took 6 for 80. He was really on a spell, and he was bowling to Cameron Greene up the other end. So that really speaks volumes to how good Cameron Greene was batting. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Henriquez in the team. I wouldn't be surprised to see either any of these guys to be playing the number 6 role. In the ODI team, this is I haven't really thought too much about the T20 side just because there's so much variance and there's so much uncertainty around it. It's just you really need to see a larger sample size before you make you draw more conclusions, I guess. And see really what we need, see what the form guide is like. Josh Phillip, by the way, he did just take Aaron Finch's spot in RCB's side, which is I want to say it's good for Flip, but it's also really bad because Aaron Finch is our national captain and he's just gotten dropped. So I don't know how what that means for Aaron Finch this summer. But that is what it is. It is what it is. Alex Carey hasn't really been getting many games. He's been stuck behind Rishabh Pant. And fair. Pant's pretty good, especially for Joe Morch. So Moises Henriquez, I would probably put. Yeah, I really can't split those 3 rounders, guys. I really can't. I think if you want to go with your firm, I think Henriquez is probably the safest option, right? But if you want to really see where Stoinis is at, you give him 1 game or 2 games in the 6th spot and just see what he does, yeah? But then if you really, if things keep going on the right path, you pick Cameron Greene. And there's been a lot of, there has been a bit of confusion. There's been a lot of mixed responses from what I've seen today, because it's only really been a few hours since they released the squad. But there has been a lot of mixed responses to Cameron Greene being in the squad. Most of them wow, he's actually here. It is he's actually, the time's almost here. Our brightest prospect, Greg Chappell said, since Ricky Ponting is here. He's really close to a debut now. But then there's also some people he hasn't really done anything in white ball yet. And I sort of see both sides of it, because obviously we all want to see Cameron Greene play for Australia as soon as possible, just because he's what seems to be a generational talent. But then you also got to look at what he did last season, in the Big Bash and all that, and he wasn't really that good. Whether he was just sort of out of his depth, he wasn't in the right role, whether he just didn't know he hadn't focused on that yet, whether it was all just ill thrown in the deep end, focused on first class cricket. It all remains to be seen. But what I think is the reason behind the selectors selecting Greene at this point is Cameron Greene is meant to be bowling this week. He's meant to be bowling tomorrow or in tomorrow's match. Just like not going like full back to 100%, like 20 over spells. 20 overs in innings. Probably just like a couple overs here and there, like as like a batting all-rounder would do, you know. And perhaps still on the conservative side. But I read an article that said that he's not going to go like 80% when he does bowl, or he's going to go like full hammer and tong, you know, do what he has to do to take wickets. He's going to bowl like what his new technique is. We haven't seen it yet, but if it's anything like based around his skill that we've seen with the ball in the past, and if it fixes injury woes, he's going to be pretty nice. But yeah, so there's still an entire like break until there's still to the break of the Sheffield Shield before we get to the white ball series. And what I'm thinking the selectors are thinking at this point is Cameron Greene is on track to get his bowling right, and he's on track to get, if he just keeps conserving, keeps building in the end, keeps building, maybe he does get back to being an opening bowler by the end of the Shield break. I still think they'll probably be conservative with him, just because that has seemed to be their approach over the last year, which I totally agree with, because we've seen a lot of young cricketers' careers just been stuffed over, especially with the fast bowling like James Pattinson, Joel Paris, especially for Western Australia, Joel Paris, who's back this summer, which is really, really good to see. But James Pattinson could have been Mitchell Johnson and more. There's just so many, you know. There's and then then there was a player bowled 155 whose name escapes me, but he kept getting injured as well. But you want to play it real conservative with Greene. I think that's what Western Australia will do. But what I'm thinking the selectors are hoping is by the end of the Shield season, he'll be back up to full health. He'll be back up to, you know, bowling properly. And at that point, they can throw him in as a genuine all-rounder for the ODI side. And then just progress him from there. Because if he is right as an all-rounder, he will play, right? I think, like, if he can get his bowling back to where, like, anything near it was, like, he averages 21 in first-class cricket, for God's sake. If he can just get it in the postcode of that, right, get it averaging 30 for the rest of this season, he will be he is the best all-rounder. I can't even, like, I haven't been around to see a good all-rounder, you know? Then, like, you sort of have to pick him. You just have to. He will be the number one all-rounder. It won't even be close, right? But if he's still only bowling like these 2-over periods, you know, and he still doesn't feel it, or Western Australia aren't going to let him, then they won't play him, and they'll just keep him around for the leadership sort of thing around him, and they'll get him a taste of what international cricket is like. If he's an all-rounder, he 100% plays the ODI series, I think. Like, especially, you know, this is just assuming, like, he doesn't go and score 20, you know? Which I don't think will happen. He's got such a beautiful technique. Like, in my personal opinion, he's the best Australian batsman to watch at the moment. Like, even ahead of Marnus. It just times it so beautifully. He's so orthodox. And he's got, like, this little step in front of the wicket as well. Might incorporate that into my own game. But yeah, it's just so beautiful to watch. And it is, when he's at the top, like, there's no reason not to pick him, you know, other than his age, you know. And, you know, I totally understand that the argument, you know, don't rush him in don't put all this pressure on the young players. You need to give them a few years to look at them first. And I totally agree. Because, like, Will Pucovski, I'm, like, Will Pucovski's biggest fan. I'm now officially a Stars fan now that he has signed with the Stars, right? But yeah, no, we see, like, if we rushed him in, he said himself, it wasn't because of, you know, being selected for the test team that he had all these mental health issues. But it's fair to say that the pressure on him, or the growing hype, may have contributed to that, or whether it was just, you know, things do just happen, you know. But it can be a lot of pressure to put on. We saw Jake Doran. That seems like an eternity ago. He was touted as the next big thing for Australia, and he ended up just being pretty average, you know. He scored a ton first round, which is what I don't know why I found that just so funny that, you know, he was back and he's made his third first class ton. He's averaging like 26, and now he's a mainstay in Tasmanian's Sheffield Shield team, which is a fair representation of how bad Tasmania are going at the moment. I think they're probably like, actually no, did they just beat South Australia? No, Travis Head just saved the match. I think they're like the equal worst teams, and then Victoria's pretty low as well. But that's a side note. But yeah, if Cam Greene is at 100%, you've got to pick him. But if he's not, if he's just still playing as a batsman, if he's still only bowling these few overs, then that's fine. They can always just release him from the squad. I'm not sure they will do. I think they'd prefer to have more reserves with this whole virus thing that I'm not allowed to say on the internet or YouTube. I'm not allowed to say it. But with this whole thing going on, I think they would prefer to get a larger squad, if you like. And just have more reserves. And like it's always good to just get him where he's not necessarily in the spotlight, but he's just sort of around the vibe, you know. He'll be, you know, shaking hands with Virat Kohli, you know. Which is like, that's pretty cool to think about if you are Cameron Greene, you know. So shout out to him for making the team. The rest of the batting lineup is pretty standard. You would imagine it would go Finch, it'll be basically the same team as we saw against England, but then you've also, like, you got to minus Marsh. Like, at full strength, like that series, you would minus Stoinis and put in Smith. But now with Stoinis' recent form, you're like, okay, do we just take out Marsh and then just move Stoinis down from 3 to 6? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they play it. Because, I mean, they could play him at 5. Actually, yeah, because Glenn Maxwell's been batting 6, and he was been batting really well. IPL wise, he's been stinking it up. He has been for the last few seasons though in IPL. So, you know, I don't know really what to make of that. I don't know how much you really want to take out of IPL, just for the Australians. For guys like Phillip, it's obvious it's massive. You know, first sort of international. IPL's based. It's a pretty big stage, to say the least. You know, it's big for Flip to get his contract like that. Daniel Sams has been pretty alright too. James Pattinson has been really, really good, which is, it's great to see that he's not just getting back. I think he's like back up to he'll never be back up to 100% health, because like we saw that brief period of what James Pattinson could have been, and like he would easily be the best bowler in the world at the moment. And I've got no, you know, heartfelt hopes. No, that doesn't make sense. I've got no, I don't know, no regrets saying that, I guess. You know, I feel like I say that pretty confidently. But it's good to see. Obviously our bowling stocks are going to be fine, but it's good to see that we're getting more depth finally, because we've been having to rely on, basically, you know, Warner, Smith. I mean, it was Khawaja for a while there, and then Mitch Stark. That's been it for our ODI team. That's what we've had to rely on. But we can now take a few more notes. There's plenty of good players coming through, but I'm really, really liking where that stands at the moment. As for our T20 side, it remains to be seen. I'll probably talk about that on the next episode, and then we'll go into the available spots for the test team in an episode after that, which I have already sort of thought about. I was procrastinating in class the other day, and I was like, all right, this position's available, this is our depth, here are the smokies, you know. So that'll be sort of interesting to talk about. But I think that'll just about do it for this episode of The Ding. Thank you very much for watching or listening wherever you are. Of course, if you're on YouTube, if you're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Cast, Breaker, Radio Public, the like. I think that's all of them. Thank you very much for listening. Drop a subscription if you're on YouTube. Keep downloading the pod. Chuck it on automatic downloads if you could. That'd be awesome. Share it around to a couple mates. Also, if you're listening from my old cricket comments page, welcome to the Big Swing Noting podcast. This was the face that ran that page, and yeah, this is I guess the next stage of cricket comments, if you like. Which if you're coming from that, you would have seen the post by now, which I haven't made, but I will. I don't know when it'll come out, probably tomorrow morning. Anyway, thank you all very much for listening and watching, and play it through.